In this video, I want to cover the history of black illegal, if you can call it that, but we prefer to call it pirate radio station. Okay, you know, the Europeans call it illegal, okay, but we call it pirate, okay. And however, how it began, let's discuss PCRL. PCRL is based in Birmingham, UK, United Kingdom, and it came about in 1985 as a result of the Handsworth Riots regarding racism, institutional racism. But black people had no voice. The mainstream media refused to cover injustice, you know, racial injustice, and when black people were being killed by skinheads, and especially when black nightclubs were being burnt down with black people inside of it, and white people didn't cover it. You know, I was in the, no, it was a Heath, I think it's Heath Town Club, where black people were burned alive. Burnt alive by racists, and you know, and the mainstream media refused to cover it because black lives, even at that time, didn't matter. So we had, you know, the genius invention of you know, the pirate radio station. That's how they were born. Just like the black church. The black churches came about because white people didn't want to worship with black people. So out of black suffering, we have to reinvent ourselves and do something, you know, on a survival level, or otherwise we don't survive. So we, you know, so under suffering and tribulation, black people seem to function better, and we started our own pirate radio stations. They were always raided by the police, and simply because they claimed that they were interfering, you know, with the signals, the ambulance signals, etc. This is what they were claiming. However, black people would try to apply for licensing to make it legal. They were trying to apply for licensing, but what happened was, you know, the authorities, the council, wouldn't give them licensing. And as a result, they had to go underground and they would get raided. But the black community, they still funded them because it was a need. Black people will fund projects if they really want it. And black people would fund it, and as a result, even though they had the equipment seized, they would open back again somewhere else because black people put money behind it. And they would get raided over and over again. It's like a cat and mouse game. But it was a need. We needed, you know, that kind of service. Because the mainstream media radio stations not only did not play black music, but they did not show anything to do with black news. In the end, just like the church, where the church is no longer, if you like, discuss racial injustice or civil rights issues, because what the government did, they did a deal with the church, and that is, if you want to be a charity, you have to be inclusive, meaning deal with trans issues and homosexual issues and keep away from racism. Hence why the black church has stepped down from being proactive in the civil rights movement. That was the deal for having a charity status, which means you don't pay license. Okay, sorry, don't pay license. You don't pay taxes. Regarding black radio stations, what happened was, how they neutralized things was that the white radio stations started to play quote unquote black music. And the reason why they did that was because it was a way of distracting black people from having an all-black radio station, which was unedited, which was unneutralized, which was unfiltered. By having a white person in control of it, it meant that they know what you're doing, you know, what you're saying, and it means they could control any uprising, any revolt or revolution. However, the so-called black radio stations that exist today, if they do, actually are run by white people, not black people, to my knowledge. Or the sun's coming out, okay, not black people to my knowledge. But that was how Black Voice, you know, had, in fact, black newspapers, you know, owned by Jews. I won't mention any names, but one of the major newspaper in England is actually run by Jews, which is why it's all covered in fashion and music and gossip, and less about real things that affect the black community. You know, this is how they control us. This is how they control us, is by buying us out. Even our restaurants are owned by Indians, you know, and not by us. Money is power. Money is power, and property is also superpower. If you don't want black people to have access to these things, all you do is buy it out, pretend you're providing black service, but on a, you know, neutralized level. And that's how they contain black revolution and black anger. And this is the history of, you know, black pirate radio stations. You know, it's the same thing with the church. They didn't want to give us a service. However, when we decided that we wanted to do it legally, they refused to give us a license, you know, and then all of a sudden the other mainstream started to play our music, you know, because they realized that we were going to keep going for this pirate approach. I remembered first starting out teaching singing lessons, and one thing about advertising on pirate radio station, it's so cheap, unlike the mainstream radio stations where it's thousands of pounds just for 5-minute slot. On a pirate radio station, you were paying pennies to reach out to your people. At least the benefit of having a black radio station, you know you're reaching out to your people, your market. If you got a black hairdressing, black fashion, black entertainment, whatever, you know you're reaching out to your people. It's called specialized niche marketing. However, when you have a white radio station playing black music, you know most white people listen to black music now. You know, I don't ever think black people are going to tune in and listen to it, especially when they find out that, you know, it's the new black face pretending that it's black people doing it, but it's not. You know, it's white people. It was done out of mischievousness to control us, to neutralize us, as Malcolm X said. And that's the brief history. They didn't want us to have a radio station because by having a radio station, you can inform each other what's going on. Do you remember the anonymous riot, which was, you know, the anti-capitalist that were taking place everywhere, all because they were organizing it through WhatsApp and Facebook? Well, the pirate radio station was similar. You tell people there's a march here, turn up, blah, blah, blah. So-and-so got involved in a racist murder, turn up and protest. No mainstream radio station or even TV is going to do that. Only black people can talk from the heart and with passion. And that's the reason why they neutralized and shut us down, and instead had either sold out person, doing it, or a white person. So that's the history of the black struggle. That's the history. And you got Manchester, you got Birmingham, London, I think it's Wolverhampton Skyline, all face the same struggle of trying to get a license. Black people just say, something, why we want to get a license. They're trying to do it legally, but they weren't allowed to. Just like when you're going for bank loans to run a business, trying to better yourself, and they put obstacles in your way. I hope this gives you, a brief background as to black radio stations and the struggles that we face and continue to face today.